The 1820s, the antebellum era, the decade that birthed the Romantic era of music, that saw the creation of two states, where the first photograph was taken, and the decade that ended with one of the most controversial presidents taking office. It was a decade full of excitement and uncertainty. But for Isaac Burnett and his family, 1829 was a year full of strange occurrences and of fear as an unexpected visitor took up residence in their home. This is the story of the ghost of Edgefield. Isaac Burnett and his wife Hedda lived on the outskirts of Edgefield City with their 7 children. Their house was in a rural area framed by a forest. The family began to notice strange sounds coming from outside. They would hear a spinning wheel, ducks, and hens making a ruckus. Isaac thought it was one of the neighborhood kids trying to scare his children. But when the noises started to come from inside the house, the family realized this was something else. One of the Burnett children said that he could talk to a ghost, and the family tried to have a conversation with it. Reports say that the ghost replied with a parrot whistle at first, but as they kept trying to talk with the entity, it began to reply with words. To all those that knew him, Isaac was a humble man. He didn't exaggerate, and he told you how it was. He was a hard worker, and he took care of his family's large farm. So when news spread about the strange visitor in the Burnett household, people took notice. Neighbors began to show up to the Burnett home to hear the strange phenomenon for themselves. One of these neighbors was James Shepherd, a state legislator, a veteran of the War of 1812, and father to future South Carolina Governor John C. Shepherd. James, by all accounts, was said to be a pious man and a worthy citizen, but even he was astonished by the encounter he had with the presence residing in the Burnett household. Shepherd asked the voice various questions, like the names of neighbors, how many children he had, and why it was there. The ghost replied with all of the correct answers to Shepherd's questions, but when asked why it was here, the voice replied with,
I had nowhere else to go.
Shepherd then asked if it came to harm the Burnett family, but the voice replied, no, that it loved the family. Shepherd finally asked if the ghost loved Jesus Christ. Silence. The ghost stopped talking to Shepherd after that and refused to do so again. After this, news of the ghost spread like wildfire through South Carolina. The Weekly Gleaner, a local newspaper, wrote an article on the ghost in its August 4th issue in 1829. The article says, "The Edgefield Ghost. The Edgefield Carolinian has favored the world with an account of a ghost which has annoyed some of the good people of that district for several months past. We are among those who consider the existence of ghosts and hobgoblins as altogether improbable, if not impossible, believing that they have always had their origin in the distempered imaginations of the superstitious, or the tricks of the designing, and as regards the Edgefield ghost, we fully concur in the following remarks of the Richmond Compiler. We should doubt the phenomenon altogether, but if true, it is unquestionably a case of ventriloquism. Such tricks have been played before, and the secret has been for some time well kept. In the present case, the ear only, not the eye, is addressed, and the invisibility of the agent shews the sort of maneuver which is practiced. The Charleston Courier contains the following abstract of this wonderful ghost story. The Carolinian of the 11th instance, printed at Edgefield Courthouse, contains a very long and circumstantial account of a ghost which has annoyed for some months past the family of a Mr. Isaac Burnett, residing about 12 miles below Cambridge in that district. The visits of this invisible character, which commenced as long ago as October last, were made as well by day as by night. It converses freely with the different members of the family, as well as with the neighbors who happen to come in when the spirit moves it. The house, which the family resides, consists of a single room with a piazza on one side, and although numbers have been present at various times and listened to the dialogues held between the ghost and the others, yet the strictest watch and examinations have failed to discover the object. These facts are attested by many persons of the first respectability in the district. The editor of the Carolinian, who is not in this case disposed to believe that a breach has been made in the laws of nature without any useful purpose, is yet unable to give any satisfactory explanation of the circumstances upon rational principles. The Burnetts had 7 children. Among these was a 10-year-old Martha. She became the primary focus of the haunting after she refused to speak with the voice in the house. She was terrified of it, so much so that whenever someone would talk to the ghost or speak of it, she would get physically ill. The ghost would try to get Martha to speak with it, especially when she was alone in the house. Martha would have to leave the house and go to a neighbor's home just to get away from the voice. One evening, after coming home from a friend's house, the ghost spoke to her again, trying to force a conversation. This time, Martha was prepared and started to quote scripture. She claimed to have felt a tightness in her jaw as she began, as if something was trying to force it shut. But she persisted and finished the quote. The verse Martha read was from 1 Timothy 1:15. This is a faithful saying, and worthy of all acceptance, that Jesus Christ came into the world to save sinners, of whom I am chief. The ghost left her alone after this incident, and never bothered her again. But this event left Isaac shaken, and he decided to place a Bible in the loft of the house where the voice originated, in hopes to drive it out. It wasn't long after Isaac placed the Bible in the loft before the ghost came down and began talking to them from the living room. It told them that it was going away, and when they asked why, it said it could not stay. The ghost left for 2 weeks. During those 2 weeks, the voice visited others in the neighborhood whom it had conversed with while in the Burnett home. After the 2 weeks were up, it returned to the Burnetts and continued to stay with them. After several weeks, the voice seemed to wear out its welcome. Objects began to move, and the Bible's power over the ghost seemed to lessen over time. Isaac called in Reverend Hodges to rid them of the phenomenon. Reverend Hodges would travel to the Burnett home numerous times, but each time the voice would not speak. But while Hodges was visiting James Shepherd, they got some news. The ghost was currently talking at the Burnett household. The pair of men left immediately, and once there they sent one of the young Burnetts inside to talk to the ghost while they waited on the porch. The ghost seemed not to like Reverend Hodges and would pronounce his name lazily and slurred. Hodges shouted from outside that he came to drive the ghost away. The ghost replied,
Do if you dare.
The Reverend and the ghost talked for an hour. The contents of their conversation has been preserved, but the conversation ended with Hodges requesting the ghost to whistle him a song. The ghost replied that he didn't know any, so Hodges began to whistle a hymn. The ghost said that
This would not do.
and began to loudly whistle Yankee Doodle. After Reverend Hodges and the ghost spoke, the Reverend told the Burnett family not to interact with the voice any longer. Something in their conversation had uneased him. After doing what the Reverend instructed, the ghost was barely heard and eventually faded, leaving the Burnett home silent. In the years that followed, the memory of the ghost faded away. Martha Burnett, the ghost's main target, died in 1860 at the age of 41. Her father Isaac outlived her by 6 years. The Burnett house is long gone, and all that remains of the location is an overgrown field on private property off Highway 25. We have to wonder, is the ghost really gone, or is it just waiting for someone to come along and strike up a conversation?